Today, folks, the judiciary did what it was meant to do. Check a president who defied the rule of law, a sobering moment in our American democracy.
A federal judge has just found that the Trump administration has willfully disregarded one of his court orders and that probable cause exists that it is in criminal contempt of court. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Mark Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started.
A few days ago, Judge James Boasberg issued a ruling that sent shockwaves through Washington. His message was clear. No one, not even the President of the United States, is above the law.
U.S. District Judge James Boasberg said he found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt for violating his orders to turn around planes carrying deportees to El Salvador.
In a sharply worded 46-page opinion, Boasberg found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in criminal contempt. The offense: repeatedly and knowingly defying a direct court order, an order that barred deportation flights carrying asylum seekers to El Salvador. Despite the ruling, those planes took off anyway. This isn't just a story about one legal decision. It's the culmination of a deepening standoff between the executive branch and the judiciary. The White House has been walking a line many consider to be outright defiance, and Boasberg appears to have had enough. One name in the center of the storm is Kilmer Abrego Garcia, a man deported by the Trump administration despite a federal judge's order that he be returned to the U.S. The administration claims Abrego is tied to MS-13, labeling him a national security threat. But no evidence has been provided. Not to the judge, not to the public, not even to El Salvador's own president, who says he's not sending Abrego back. Boasberg's ruling is rare and serious. He not only threatened prosecution if the administration failed to comply, but he also opened the door for broader contempt charges tied to a series of similar deportation cases. And he's not alone. Other judges across the country are now weighing contempt charges against the White House. It's an extraordinary moment, not just legally, but constitutionally. Legal scholars are sounding the alarm. Melissa Murray, a professor at NYU and respected legal analyst, described it as one of the most aggressive examples of executive defiance in modern history. The courts are doing a Herculean job just to hold the line, she said. But this was never supposed to be their fight alone. This is a three-branch system. And right now, Congress is missing in action. Congressman Ro Khanna, who appeared alongside Murray, didn't hold back either. We have a vice president and a sitting administration flat out refusing to follow court orders, he said. That's not just political. That's a betrayal of our democracy. Khanna pointed to a unanimous Supreme Court ruling, 9-0, affirming that Abrego was entitled to due process. Yet the deportation went ahead anyway. And in a rare move, Boasberg emphasized that even when a court ruling is later vacated or moved to another jurisdiction, the original order must still be followed unless and until a higher court reverses it. But the Trump administration has opted to ignore those norms. In tweets and press conferences, officials have dismissed the court's authority, arguing that national security concerns override judicial orders, a claim that legal experts say doesn't hold water. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance, now vice president, added fuel to the fire with a tweet saying the administration isn't even pretending to comply with the Supreme Court anymore. We don't think immigrants deserve due process, he wrote.
What the Vice President of the United States tweeted, he said to say the administration must observe due process is to beg the question, what process is due, is function of our resources, the public interest, the status of the accused, the proposed punishment, and so many other factors.
It's an embarrassment that this man is vice president and graduated from Yale Law School and puts out stuff like that. I mean, what J.D. Vance is saying is that the Supreme Court and the Constitution's interpretation of due process doesn't matter, that the police can literally come to any person's home if they're not a U.S. citizen, take them, that the United States government can send them away to a dictatorship, and that they don't even need a trial. And who gets to decide if that's fair? J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. That is what J.D. Vance is arguing for in that tweet. His own attorney general isn't frivolous enough to make that kind of argument. They're at least keeping a pretense that we're going to send a plane. Vance is saying, no, you don't need to do it. He's basically saying the Supreme Court has ruled, now let them enforce it. I'm just going to go with my interpretation. It is dangerous, and it is a threat to the very constitutional system, not just for Abrego. If they can do it to Abrego, they can do it to any person who's vulnerable in this country.
That blunt statement pulled back the curtain on what many critics have feared, that the administration is openly rejecting the legal framework that holds the government accountable. This is a constitutional crisis, said Murray. We've had tensions between branches before, but this is different. This is a White House that's daring the courts to act and daring Congress to care. And Congress, for the most part, has been silent. Murray was frank. Democrats may not hold the majority, but that doesn't mean they're powerless. Where's the oversight? Where's the accountability? Where are the resolutions demanding compliance with the rule of law? She wasn't the only one demanding more from lawmakers. Khanna called for an emergency session of the DNC, a bipartisan House resolution affirming the authority of the courts, and, if necessary, financial pressure on the executive branch. Turn off the lights at the White House if you have to, he said, but do something. Some Republicans have begun to show signs of discomfort, but not over the court rulings. Instead, it's Trump's erratic tariff policy that's drawn criticism. Retirement accounts have been hit. Small businesses are struggling, and voters are noticing. That's where Khanna sees an opening. When money starts disappearing, even the most loyal followers start asking questions, he said. But this isn't just about tariffs or trade. This is about the soul of our constitutional system. The Supreme Court's original ruling on Abrego was a landmark moment. It reaffirmed the principle that due process applies to everyone on U.S. soil, regardless of immigration status. But that legal victory now feels hollow as long as the executive branch refuses to recognize it. Legal precedent is clear. Court orders must be followed unless reversed by a higher court. That's how the rule of law works. But Trump's administration is betting that political power can override legal restraint, and so far they haven't paid a price. Melissa Murray closed her remarks with a warning. If Congress doesn't step up, the judiciary will continue to fight this battle alone. And that's not how this system was designed. That's how democracies erode. The implications of Judge Boasberg's ruling didn't end with Kilmer Abrego or a single deportation order. It tapped into something deeper, a brewing constitutional struggle that's been quietly escalating in courtrooms, congressional halls, and across the country. The core question: what happens when a president simply refuses to follow the law? This isn't just defiance in theory. It's active non-compliance, the kind of behavior that in previous administrations would have triggered immediate hearings, investigations, or even impeachment proceedings. But 2025 isn't like previous years, and this presidency doesn't operate by precedent. Legal institutions are stretched thin. Federal courts are issuing more contempt warnings against the White House than at any point in modern history. Judges are putting their concerns in writing, sometimes with sharp language more common in legal dissents than standard rulings. Boasberg's 46-page opinion wasn't just a legal document. It read like a warning flare. And while the courts are doing what they can, the cracks are growing. The Trump administration's pattern of ignoring rulings has led to a dangerous question echoing in legal circles. If the courts are ignored and Congress won't act, who enforces the law? Melissa Murray, the NYU law professor and legal analyst, laid out plainly. The judiciary cannot function in isolation. Its power relies on other branches recognizing its authority. And if the executive refuses and Congress stays quiet, the system falters. The scenario many feared, one where all three branches no longer check each other, is now unfolding in real time. It's subtle and yet glaring. Flights take off despite injunctions. Orders are treated as suggestions. Legal explanations are replaced with talking points. At the center of it all is a White House that no longer makes much effort to justify its defiance. In fact, many officials now seem emboldened by it. There are no apologies, no second guesses, just a steady message of strength, sovereignty, and executive power. This mindset is evident in how officials respond to court rulings. Instead of providing evidence or explanations, they accuse judges of overreach, bias, or deep state sabotage. The legal arguments aren't just thin, they're often non-existent. And yet, despite all this, Republican lawmakers remain largely silent. Only a handful have broken ranks, mostly over the economic fallout of Trump's aggressive tariff policies, which are now starting to bite at home. From small-town farmers to Wall Street investors, the financial pain is beginning to spread. That pain, more than any court ruling, may be what forces a political reckoning. As Congressman Ro Khanna said in his interview, you can get away with a lot in Washington. But the second you mess with people's money, they start paying attention. He's not wrong. Retirement funds have shrunk. Markets have jittered. Small businesses, already recovering from years of instability, are being hit again. The administration's refusal to back down on both legal and trade issues is creating a storm that even loyal supporters are starting to feel. But Khanna warns against relying solely on economic consequences to fix what is at its core a constitutional crisis. This isn't just about tariffs, he said. This is about whether we still believe in three co-equal branches of government. He called on Congress, both parties, to pass a resolution affirming that the executive branch must follow Supreme Court rulings. It's symbolic, sure, but symbols matter. And in a time when institutions are under attack, reaffirming basic principles can be a powerful act. Beyond symbolic measures, Khanna urged his colleagues to use their financial oversight powers, including controlling White House funding, to force compliance. It's drastic, but as he put it, if the lights stay on while the rule of law is being ignored, then what are we even doing? Melissa Murray echoed that urgency. This isn't a game of chicken, she said. We're talking about real people being deported unlawfully. We're talking about a presidency that's acting with impunity. And we're talking about a court system that may lose its relevance if this keeps up. Even the Supreme Court's prior unanimous ruling in favor of Abrego hasn't changed the administration's stance. Instead, Vice President J.D. Vance went on record saying the court's interpretation of due process was irrelevant, that immigrants shouldn't receive those rights at all. That one statement lit up legal circles. A sitting vice president rejecting the authority of the Supreme Court? In another era, that might have ended a political career. In 2025, it's just another headline in a sea of them. Still, some legal minds hold out hope. They point to the resilience of the courts, the slow grind of accountability, and the growing discomfort among voters. The midterms are still far off, but public opinion, like the law, can shift quietly until it doesn't. Already, civil rights groups are preparing new legal challenges. State attorneys general are coordinating multi-state efforts to enforce rulings. And whistleblowers from within federal agencies are reportedly sharing documents with oversight committees, the kind that show who knew what and when. But without congressional action, many of those efforts may fall flat. This is where the tension truly lies, in the space between legality and political will. The law is clear. Court orders are not optional, but enforcement only works when all branches play their part. For now, the question remains unanswered. Will Congress assert its role? Or will the judiciary continue to fight a battle it was never meant to fight alone? In his ruling, Judge Boasberg ended with a line that legal scholars have already begun quoting: "A court that is not obeyed is a court that does not function." The Constitution cannot be followed halfway. It's a stark reminder of what's at stake. And as America watches the drama unfold, some angry, others exhausted, the one truth that remains is this: laws only matter when they're enforced. And democracy only works when everyone agrees to play by the same rules. What we're witnessing isn't just a legal battle between a judge and a president. It's a stress test on the foundations of American democracy. The courts have drawn their line. They've issued orders, cited precedent, and demanded compliance. But court rulings, no matter how well-written or constitutionally sound, are powerless if ignored. That's the uncomfortable truth this moment forces us to confront. Congress still holds tools that could restore balance: oversight, funding control, formal resolutions. But those tools only work if lawmakers are willing to use them. So far, most have chosen silence. The Trump administration's stance is now more than just defiance. It's a deliberate campaign to reshape the boundaries of presidential power and to dare anyone to stop it. So now the question isn't just what will happen in the courts. It's what happens next in the country. Because if this pattern continues, if executive orders override judicial rulings, if court authority becomes a suggestion instead of a standard, then we may find ourselves in a place where the law no longer applies equally. And if that happens, the damage won't be temporary. It'll be foundational. We don't need to agree on politics to agree on this. The rule of law is either real or it isn't. And once we start choosing which laws apply to which leaders, the system as we know it begins to unravel. So now we ask you, not as partisans, but as citizens, what do you think? Is this just another Washington standoff, or the start of something more dangerous? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your voice.